Hello, it's James from XRobots.co.uk. This is part 17 of Ultron, the real robot. This Ultron project is a real robot which actually moves with motors and electronics. It's going to be partially driven by a motion capture suit, but with its own AI in the middle, so it'll only respond if it wants to based on sensors from its environment, so it's going to be quite socially interactive. Have a look back on the previous parts to see me actually making the head and the arm move with one of the motion capture sensors. That worked out pretty well, and so obviously you can imagine what it's going to be like when it's all in motion. I was going to do some more parts like I did last time, which are essentially cosmetic parts that fit in under the arm and some of the conduits, which are going to carry cables. So again, those are going to be practical cosmetics like the parts I built to house electronics last time. But I've actually decided to give that a bit more thought. So this time I'm going to work my way up and try and put the head on, or at least try and design that. And that's going to be quite interesting. There are some facial features in the movie that Ultron has around its lips, so it can move its mouth, of course its jaw, and also its eyebrows. It doesn't have too much else. But I'm going to attempt to make some parts that are flexible printed in NinjaFlex so we can try and put those features in. Here's my CAD layout, which I've been using to scale everything, so I did quite a bit on how most of these parts are designed in the previous episodes. We're going to look at the head, so basically this is the placeholder I had for the head. It's a bit big for Ultron's head. Ultron's head's a bit of a pea head really, stuck on quite a long neck. But I'm going to start with that to actually plan what the head is going to be like, and probably use this part and cut it up to try and make it shaped like Ultron's head. Now I'm using Autodesk 123D Design, which is free software. It's not particularly good for surface modelling. In fact, you can't really do surface modelling. It'd be much better to model this in Blender or something else. But I'm going to try and do it in this because it's free and I know how to use it, and Blender is quite a lot to learn. Here's the head on its own with a bit of the mechanism underneath it. So this is the gimbal, which allows the head to rotate in all directions, and obviously it's on a rotating thing which is controlled by a motor at the back. So that's already looking a bit too big for the sort of chin and neck there, so this piece is probably going to get removed and made a bit smaller to match the actual head cosmetics. But I'm going to start with this shape, as I say, to try and model the head. Here it is, so I've just dropped that to the ground and levelled it up. It was angled forward slightly in the main piece of CAD, so I can start chopping pieces out of it. I've subtracted some parts, so this main face on here, I just subtracted a sort of curve piece that I made by getting a sphere and cutting it up and shelling it out. And similarly, I'm going to subtract this part by using the subtract tool. So we'll just click on this and then click on this and press enter, and that removes the part. And we can do that to carve up the main piece there. So I drew some lines on the ground plane like this one and some others and split this up, so all of these are individual parts now. So I can try and get some better contour, and this central column, which is a bit like the shape of Ultron. Some of these bits need moving around and aligning, and eventually we'll split it up to make the jaw. I've drawn another sketch on the ground plane, which is this one, and then just rotated it around so that I can get it at the right angle, and I've used that to split the solid using the split solid tool, and that's allowed me to cut this piece out. And then I've just done a chamfer using the chamfer tool by selecting the edge and selecting a chamfer amount there, so we can go and contour up all of these pieces. And we're starting to get the look of Ultron there a little bit, I think. At least it's looking more head shaped. I've now divided the head into 4 parts by again drawing sketches and splitting it up. So I've split it down the middle and also split it on a horizontal plane there. And then I've just got these parts and rotated them slightly, like so, to try and get this to look a bit more like the shape it should be. So we've got more of a wider head at the top and a smaller jaw. I've then gone and used the chamfer tool again to just chamfer these edges to get some nicer contours. Already it's starting to look a bit more like Ultron, I think. I want to fill in the gap in the middle, so I've put this extra object here and I've used the project tool to project this edge onto here. So we can simply do that by selecting project, selecting the face and selecting what we want to project, and that draws a contour onto this piece. You can see that in red there. I've then used the split solid tool to use the green sketch to split the solid, and that allows me to cut a piece out that perfectly matches the contour that I can fit in the middle. I've made that piece a bit wider, and then basically I've tried drawing a sketch along here and adjusting it lots of times to cut this out. And I want to cut a piece off the top of the outside parts So I've used that sketch drawn on this straight plane in the middle to try and do that by then going and splitting the solid with the sketch and doing this multiple times to try and cut a piece off and then deleting it, and then through trial and error again and again trying to contour the front of the face correctly. I think I've got the right contour there, and I've done the same with that middle section, so all of those match, and that means I can merge them in. I've also put an extra chamfer down the side of the face. I've done some further changes, and I think I've got roughly the right shape there. We've obviously got the separate jaw part, which I've coloured in separately. I've done a bit of scaling on that and added some bits and pieces. We're now going to try and cut out the eyes and try and put the features around those eye sockets. So what I've done here is drawn this piece, and I'm then going to kind of stretch that out and try and locate it and then subtract that from the main structure to make the eye holes. Obviously this takes quite a bit of messing around. I'm not particularly good at freehand sculpting, so I've looked at quite a lot of reference pictures and tried to just rotate this around and get it in the right place to try and make the eyes. I think those are probably in the right place, and I've subtracted a bigger piece as well and also chamfered some of the corners to try and make the bigger eye socket, so we've got that kind of really narrow part in the middle followed by a bigger eye socket that gives some more contour to the front of the face, and we could further contour those as well. I really want to put some parts on the sort of cheekbones, which are going to kind of set it off and give it that Ultron look. So what I've done here is again projected some of these lines, projected them onto a piece here, and then I can take this and move that over and use that merged in, kind of moved around and put at the right angle to try and make up a bigger cheekbone part. Here are the pieces I decided to keep and merge in, and you can see they very much match the contours I already have on the face. Obviously I can mirror this to both sides by using the mirror tool, so it's starting to look a bit more like Ultron maybe. It looks a bit funny in the mouth at the moment, but we need to further mess around with those by making them bigger and smaller and probably adjusting the angle of them to try and get that to kind of be the cheek scoops that we can see. So I've positioned that as best I can. It probably needs some further tuning, and then I wanted to try and contour it better to match the face. So what I've done here is just put this cube floating in mid-air so I can draw a sketch on the top plane there from the top looking down, and then I'm going to try and cut this. The problem I've got is that of course it takes the sharp edge away. If I cut a piece out of it and delete it, I don't get the right shape anymore. So in the end I decided to just sort of scale it and position it and keep that sharp corner, and I've also rounded off the back here by using the fillet tool to take away that sharp edge so it matches the contour of the face, and I think that's now looking quite a lot like Ultron or something that lives under the sea. I'm not sure, it looks a bit like gills. So I've put this block down and drawn some circles, and I'm going to go and cut away a piece here and try and put the sides on, which are basically Ultron's ears, and I think that's really going to set it off. After quite a lot of messing around and chamfering edges and contouring things, there's another corner that I've cut off there using the fillet tool and various other things. I think I've got these positioned right. I'm pretty sure I've got something that looks a bit like Ultron. That says Ultron to me now, especially looking from the front. If you can imagine its mouth opening, I've put this little circular thing in the bottom it has and various other things. We can see probably that that's looking quite a lot more like Ultron now. I think having those ears on has really set it off. The back still needs some more attention, but pretty sure we've got Ultron now. I think the nose is a bit pointy and sticks out a bit too much. So basically I've got this part which I'm then going to subtract by using the subtract tool again, and we can just kind of make his nose a bit flatter. I think that really looks a bit like Ultron now. I've repositioned those a bit and also messed around with the nose a little bit more. Pretty happy with how it looks so far. I think we should put it back onto the main piece of CAD and see how well we can scale it. I thought before we do that I should go and make it all a nice colour, so if we go to the materials thing here, we can basically make it into different types of metal. I've chosen stainless steel. I've also put some separate bits in coloured red in the eyes. So yeah, that definitely looks like Ultron now to me. I've reinserted that back into the CAD we started with so I can try and scale it. I'm not sure, it's really hard actually to decide what size it should be. I've brought it down by about 3% from what I started with. So as I said, Ultron's head is kind of like a pinhead on a very long neck. It does look incredibly high compared to the arm joints, but actually they are pretty low, and there's a massive shoulder bell that comes over those on each side as well. And Ultron's head is kind of up on this thing supported by conduit and stuff. Compared to the back chassis, it's about the right height compared to reference pictures that I've found and so on. Now you have to bear in mind this gimbal thing won't be here. There's conduits that run down either side of the neck and a thick neck in the middle, so at the moment it looks a bit like it's floating there in space, which it is, but obviously there'll be supporting neck parts, and obviously the parts in the front here, the clavicle, and other various parts that fill in this massive hole in the front of the chest. Now this Ultron robot is sort of slightly wider front to back than it should be due to the arm mechanism, so it looks a bit underwhelming from the side, although I think its height is okay. But from the front, if you can sort of look at pictures of Ultron, I'm sure people will disagree and say the head needs to be slightly bigger maybe, but I'm pretty sure that I've got it just right there, and that's the size that I'm going to proceed with. I think obviously it is quite thin, but with the kind of earpieces on each side, if you can take into account that width, then I think actually it probably matches. Although if I look at it with fresh eyes, sometimes it looks a bit small, but then if I look at reference pictures again, it is quite small, so I'm going to go with this size. So here it is back with the neck gimbal mechanism, and as I say, this outside part is going to go. I need to retain the two holes that are closest for the pivot points that go to the servos. The outside ones are not used, so that T-shape can be reduced. What I need to of course do is make sure the jaw can move up and down around this. So the gimbal and the neck needs to be attached to the top of the head, otherwise its head is going to flip up and down as the mouth opens, and the jaw needs to move down around this. So probably what I need to do is preserving the hinge points and the pivot points, get rid of that, and then build a piece that attaches to the top once I've hollowed it out that actually gimbals around this piece. So now we actually need to turn this into a mechanical assembly that works, work out where servos and things are going to go for the jaw, and also which parts are going to be printed in NinjaFlex. There's quite a lot more dividing lines in the face, so we need to make sure that the top and bottom lips can move and flex, and hopefully the around the eyes, those sections, or at least some eyebrows that can move, even if there are splits in it and those parts move independently, so we can get some facial expressions. I've started by sorting out this jaw hinge mechanism, so I've replaced the outer gimbal with this blue part that goes right up inside the head. That'll be fixed up in the top of the head, and I've now got a slot in the bottom of the jaw here so that the jaw can hinge around it using this blue axle as a pivot. So we can sort of simulate how much the jaw can open by using Smart Rotate, by selecting that face to rotate around, selecting all the items we want to rotate, just get all of them, selecting the axis, and then we can say put in 6 degrees, and we can see that jaw drops down. I think that's enough for speaking. If I redo and undo, we can see the motion there. It can shut a bit more than that as well, so I think that's going to be sufficient. I've now split the head in two so we can see inside there, and you can see I've hollowed out the middle, and I did that by subtracting the jaw and then pulling all those faces up. It was a bit of a challenge, but I got there in the end. I drew some other sketches as well and cut round the eyes there, otherwise we end up with really big eye sockets and we don't preserve these faces. So we can see there that I've got the blue thing runs all the way up, so I just need to make a cap to sit that on so the top of the head can push down onto it. I've now put an extra solid piece in the back of the head there, so obviously this will be in 2 halves, and this thing will slot into a cavity so the top of the head can literally lift up and be pushed back down onto that, and as I say, the jaw will hinge around it as well. I want to cut out the eyebrows, so what I've done here is made a copy of half the head, and then I've again projected some of these lines onto a plane here, and I'm going to use that to cut out a piece to make an eyebrow that's going to be animatronic. Here's the piece I'm left with, which of course perfectly merges in here, if I can get it in the right place, leaving me the eyebrow shape. So what I need to do now is subtract that from the main head and then keep a copy of it so I've got a piece that fits in a hole in exactly the right place. And here they are. I've coloured them in a different colour, but obviously they'll be the same colour. And if I hide half that head again, I've actually got a channel in here where we can get a servo in to push a rod up and down, so I think the middle of those eyebrows are going to be fixed and the outsides will flex outwards and they're going to be printed in flexible filament like NinjaFlex. So I've just coloured those a more sensible colour. They're silver or some other metal off the materials menu, but at least we can see they roughly match, but they're separate parts. I've also done the same thing with the top lip now. So this is again going to be flexible and pushed in and out at the middle by a servo. So if we just get rid of the bottom jaw, we can see in fact I've left screw holes here, so I can screw this piece in and that will match screw holes in the top jaw. So I can actually print that part separately and then attach it later, and if it's not thick enough or thin enough, then I can experiment with it and adjust it so it's flexible enough without reprinting the whole thing as a hybrid print. There's a hole in here which will probably get adjusted for the servo to push and pull the middle of the lip. And I've done the same with the bottom lip as well. So let's just get rid of the top of the head, and we can see in fact that we've got a very similar arrangement with a servo point and some screw holes that screw through into the bottom jaw. I've just adjusted those lips so they're flat. That's for two reasons. One, so it looks more like Ultron, and the other one is so I can print those parts flat on the bed. I've also made some minor adjustments to where the servos attach. You can see that I've now got a variety of holes in there, and I've made these things slightly shorter, especially the back one, so the servo point is nearer the lip and this whole block isn't sticking out as much. Ultron has two red lit sections that contour the top of the head, so what I've done is in fact cut off the top of the head, leaving a channel so we can see the one here. It's about 6mm wide, so I can fit it full of red LEDs or something else to illuminate it. So that means I can of course lift off the top of the head to get inside. I've allowed some pegs here to actually align it so it just pops back on, and also illuminate those channels. Around the back of the head we're going to need another panel which is a bit like a mullet that basically matches the spine contour as the back of those pieces come up on the back of the body, but for now I've just left two holes here so that I can get cables in, possibly some big conduit can run in there. Haven't really decided how it's going to look yet, and that's for access to the electronics of course. So there will be a cover over those probably, or some other feature that hangs down the back. Printing this thing is a bit more of a challenge, so I've actually cut the sides of the head here in two, so I get two flat surfaces. I was going to print the two sides on the inside faces facing the print bed, but that would have meant loads of support material to hold it up. So I've decided instead to put an extra seam line in and print the top and bottom of the head separately. That's the very top of the head, and over here we've got the jaw, which again is cut in two to give flat surfaces, and we've got the Ninja Flex parts here and the ears which I've added on. I've still got to do something about the mechanism, which is in blue, to print this extra gimbal part, but again that'll be printed in two parts, so they're both flat on the bed and any warpage gets taken out by the two being attached together. I've got one of the parts in slicer here, and I'm using slightly different settings to usual, so what I'm in fact doing is using a 0.2mm layer height instead of 0.3, and I'm using 6 perimeters and an infill density of only 10%. So normally I do about 20 or 30% and 4 perimeters. The perimeters are the basically the amount of shells around the outside, so 6 should make much stronger parts, and obviously the lower density infill will mean they're lighter. It also means the top surfaces as parts come in like this should be better, so because we've got more perimeters on the slopes and things, we should get a better quality print. So they should come out nice and light and really strong and pretty good quality. Here are some of the 3D printed parts. I've stuck some of them together and some of them I haven't yet. So the top of the head, the two parts are stuck together, so that's quite good. And as I said, I've got these holes here to put pegs in so that I can locate those, and I'll probably make sure that still lifts off so I can get inside. The sides of the head here have come out pretty well. I've still got support material to remove where the rubber eyebrows are going to go, and in the eye socket, these took 14 hours each, and that's with a 0.2mm layer height, as I say, with 6 perimeters and a 10% infill, so they've come out pretty well. Still the support material for that eyebrow channel, but we've got the 2 halves there. These are the next parts down, so these go upside down underneath the top of the head, and this is where I've got the removable jaw part. So this is the sort of top lips, if you like, which I've taken support material out. It's Ninja Flex, of course, so it's flexible. I've taken half the support material out, the other half I still need to take out, and with those screw holes that will neatly fit in there to make that. That's the top lip, in fact, with a rod that will pull from a servo that I'll mount later so that its lips can flex all around. And here's the bottom jaw, which is stuck together out of those 4 slices. It's a bit messy on the bottom, but all we'll really see is the front there. And again, we've got this other Ninja Flex bottom lip that will neatly screw in there. The whole thing, of course, is mounted around this alternative head mounting stick with the jaw pivot. And then if we look in the top of the head here, we've got this piece that this fits into so that everything will be mounted around that and the head top can lift off. So I'm going to get some more of that assembled and we'll see how it looks for size. So there we go. Let's just pop that on there. Good. Okay, so the jaw is temporarily attached at the moment. The rod in there is too thin, so it's a bit wobbly, but it does fit, and it fits inside the top of the head, which is important. I think that opens enough there. Obviously, the lips are flexible. They're a bit stiff, so I might have to make thinner walled ones. But the aim is, of course, a servo can push those in and out independently so that we can get some sort of speech pattern or something, or it'll probably just be to do with facial expressions and emotions. And I haven't printed the eyebrows yet, which I need to work on. I'll remember to make those nice and thin so that those can flex in and out, so a combination of the mouth and the lips and head gestures, and we can get some quite good facial expressions. So I still need to put obviously the animatronics in, which I can solvent weld in. All of these parts are ABS. I can solvent weld in the servo brackets to lift the jaw up and down and move those features. They can all be fitted inside at a later date. So I'm not sure if it looks a bit too friendly at the moment. It doesn't look exactly like Ultron. It looks a bit more like a friendly teddy bear, but I think perhaps when its eyes are glowing red and it kind of turns around to look at you, then perhaps that'll be a bit more scary. I still have the sides of the mouth to put in there as well, so at the moment we've just got this big hole, so that'll be a bit more enclosed, but I'm pretty happy with that for now. It seems to have come out okay, and I think it matches the scale of the rest of the robot. At the moment, as I said before, the head does look a bit high, but we do have quite a lot more pieces to build. So we've got the shoulder bells that sit up here, which are kind of the tops of the shoulders, and then the conduit that comes down and the clavicle over the front. And then we've got even bigger shoulder bells that come over the actual arm, which make it much wider, in fact, and build up those shoulders. So those are going to happen next time. I think I'm going to try and scale out those parts so it doesn't look like such a pinhead with its head right on top. And then after that we can work on the rest of the arms, and then after that we can do some serious electronics, get the animatronics working, get all those features working. So it's really probably another 2 to 3, maybe 4 episodes before we've got most of the core parts working. There are still some cosmetics to go on, and then after that we can work on the AI. So the project's really coming along. Don't forget to check back next time to see more updates on this project, and subscribe to my channel to see more updates on all the other projects that I've got going on as well. And check out the social media links in the descriptions of this video, including my new Instagram account for sneak peeks and updates.